Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have a presentation with a special consultant, Elaine Carmichael, and also we have Bill Champagne, who is here with us. So why don't we turn it over to you first, Bill, and you can introduce our guest.
Thank you very much. So I'm Bill Champagne, president of the Norwich Historical Society, and I'm with Regan Miner, the consultant to the Norwich Historical Society, and we've presented a number of times to the council, certainly about Norwich's heritage and things that we're doing with history and architecture in Norwich. We have a very short mission statement. We've read it before, but I'm going to say it again: to preserve, promote, and protect the rich history of Norwich. This evening, we're going to focus on the promote part, although everything else is going to be related to preserve and protect as well. In the past, much has been done to tell the story of Norwich's history, from plaques to events, but during the past 4 years that Regan has been involved, there's been a marked increase in heritage awareness. And we'd like to take heritage development to the next level and make it a serious component of economic development in Norwich. So I'm going to go over a very short list, and it's not complete, of Norwich's significant historic resources. Many of these we have been involved with. Many of them have received funding from the Sachem Fund, the State Historic Preservation Office, the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation, state bonding money. All of the funders have seen the value of heightening the awareness of these resources. So I'm going to say them as fast as possible. I was going to do a map showing these, but I thought that would take too long. So not necessarily in any kind of order: Uncas Leap, Slater Memorial Museum, Leffingwell Inn, the 4 major self-guided walking trails found on walknorwich.org, the Norwich Town Historic District, including the Green, the Visitor Center, the Burying Ground, the Meadows, the East District Schoolhouse, the extremely rare 1772 silversmith shop, the Samuel Huntington House, and others. NFA with Lafayette Foster's house, and I'm not going to go into the history of the fact that he was the acting vice president of the United States after Lincoln was assassinated. Downtown and the harbor, Buckingham Memorial, Governor Buckingham, the Ellis Ruley Park that was just finished, Mohegan Park, historic cemeteries like Yantic Cemetery and Oak Street Cemetery, Panema Mill and Taftville, and the list obviously goes on, and I'm going to stop there. I'm missing a few, but it's a long list. And we're looking at this as historic resources spanning 400 years in 4 miles. So how can we better promote these historic assets? How can we make them enticing to visitors and more appreciated by residents so that the quality of life in Norwich is improved? We decided to bring in an expert who has improved communities across the country similar to ours through heritage development. One name kept coming up, and fortunately, Elaine Carmichael already knew Norwich and the Eastern Connecticut marketplace. She had consulted on the first Uncas Leap study 8 years ago. So the Norwich Historical Society asked her to help us. She presented to a small group, including Bill Nash, standing in for Mayor Nystrom, Deanna Rhodes, Bob Mills, Joe Smith, and a fellow Mohegan Council member, Greg Farmer from Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. We met on September 11th, and the group enthusiastically suggested that Elaine present to the council. So thank you for this opportunity very much, and please welcome Elaine Carmichael.
There we go. Can you hear me? Yes. Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. I have a strong affection for Norwich since coming here first about 8 years ago. Several of you I know I met with at that time, even briefly. I particularly remember a conversation with you, Mayor Nystrom. And I have to say, this is one of the most beautiful council chambers I've ever been in, and I've been in a lot of council chambers over my life. So I thought that what I'd do is talk for maybe about 20 minutes about heritage tourism and heritage development in general, and then take your questions and we'll see where the conversation goes. Does that make sense given your time?
Please.
Okay, terrific. So we're going to talk about heritage tourism briefly, and then some of the specific aspects of Norwich that bode well or present challenges that you all are going to have to overcome. And every community has challenges to overcome. That's not atypical. And what some of the first steps might be towards putting a plan into action. So you heard from that very generous introduction from Bill about who I am and why I'm here. Just so that we're all talking about things in the same way, cultural tourism is about traveling specifically to experience the character of place. It might be activities, it might be artifacts, it might be one-of-a-kind locations, restored houses, natural landscapes, but it's about stories that are authentic and that relate the past to the present and relate the people of those times to the people of today. So it's not just historic resources, it's cultural resources, it's natural resources, and it is that hard to define element that makes every city a unique place to live, work, and visit. And why should we care? Well, it turns out that the heritage travelers are really good travelers to have around. They travel lightly, they spend a lot of money, they're better educated. The fact that they value authenticity means that they forgive cities for things that aren't quite smooth, for things that aren't quite shiny, for things that aren't quite perfect, because they're more interested in the story of how a community got to where it is today and what the community is doing to make itself appealing to residents as well as visitors. And being able to alibi stuff in a community that is underway or stuff in a community that is in progress is rarely a benefit in tourism, but it is in heritage tourism because people are interested inherently in that story. And moreover, it is a way of getting younger travelers. That honesty and that openness and that authenticity and that ability to share resonates with those people. So it is an approach to tourism that has multi-generational appeal. A lot of them are baby boomers, a lot of travelers are baby boomers. And now that they're getting older, they're not as interested in climbing mountains. They're looking for things as they reflect on their life, looking back as, and I'm in the baby boom generation, time is getting shorter. And the things that become more evocative as you age are about nostalgia, understanding your place in the world, personal growth, having a better sense of the arc of your own story and how the arc of your own story fits into larger stories. And so, learning a new skill, take everything from taking cooking classes to painting to exploration of a new community is all aspects of heritage product that are appealing to this large market. And you've got the core resources. You've got stories galore. You've got stories that appeal to markets that are inherently valuable, whether it's the sites you have, the history. You've got such incredible natural beauty around here. Your built environment is lovely as well. And you've got visitors in the vicinity, a lot of visitors in the vicinity, and people around here who care. Proximity to the East Coast markets that are already pulling in a lot of national and international travelers is key. And you have the capacity to induce demand that way because you can look at how you can intervene in their decisions to the large attractors that are already here, whether it's the casinos or Mystic or the existing visitor volume that's attracted to the Lasking Valley. You have conference facilities to spin people out of, and you have a state infrastructure for heritage tourism that you can take advantage of. So the affinity groups that you have are also legion because you've got ways to appeal to recreational travelers, people who are interested in First Nations stories, which is a giant thing for the European market, especially Germans. You've got people who can be attracted to one-offs, whether it's a festival or a music celebration or other short-term things. And of course, the gamers, the spa enthusiasts. You've already got ways to get people here for products they already understand, and then you can attach to that with products that are new. But as I said, there are challenges. You're somewhat the hole in the donut of a lot of existing attractions. And that's something of a difficult place to be, how you go from being a hole in the donut to being the hub of a wheel of experiences. Norwich is confusing as a brand identity. People don't know where it is. You've got a lot of place names here. There is some local ambivalence about some of the more obvious storylines. What do we do about Benedict Arnold? How do we handle immigration stories? There's a lot of unsung heroes here, though, who offer potential for enriching the visitor experience, but take work to dig up. The organizations that you have who are in charge of all these assets have capacity issues. They all are running on, little staff, low budgets, and a lot to do. You've got holes in your hospitality sector. You have a lot at the top and a lot at the bottom, but missing a lot in the middle. The same is true for restaurant variety. And in terms of residential, one of the things that a lot of tourism places benefit from is this sort of ladder of investment, that you can go from being a casual visitor to being a regular visitor, to ultimately having a second home or deciding to retire there or to move your business there. And again, that's something that's a little more challenging for Norwich because it's not quite obvious how to do that when you're here. It always seems to me like, again, a lot at the top and a lot lower down, but not the ladder. So if we accept all that, though, that the existing organizations have capacity and that funding is difficult and that a small population means a small pool, then the way forward is strength in numbers and coordination. So that means kind of addressing some of the other organizational gaps that are here, like how tourism is promoted here is confusing. You've got the Oceanside stuff that's organized around Mystic. You've got the Last Green Valley. And here, once again, you are in the middle without a local dedicated homeroom for tourism or a dedicated funding stream. You have a lot of stories, but no one has yet really tied them all together beyond just kind of general colonial, which is fine, but it's limiting you, and you have so much more to say and so much more reason for people to become interested in Norwich and care. And then last but not least, there's the missing leverage of how can we take all of this historic fabric and use it for the other economic and community development initiatives that are going on to make Norwich more competitive as a whole by boosting its character. So I'm going to take a side moment here to talk about branding for a little bit. And brand identity and how it relates to destinations. So here we are in Norwich, the Rose of New England. So brand identity in general is difficult to put your finger on, but it's the entire gamut of emotions and thoughts and feelings, positive and negative, that arise when people get exposed to something about a destination. And it could be photographs or their logo or just the word. And it's also a promise. When you hear Paris or something, there's an immediate image and promise of what your experience is going to be like there. And it isn't even about price. Price is secondary to that initial gut reaction of what you're going to experience if you go there. One thing that's key about brand identity is that it has to make sense to people on the inside as well as people on the outside. If people on the inside don't believe it, then they're not going to advance it and they're not going to reinforce it. If people on the outside don't believe it, it comes across as just some sort of marketing shtick. And the thing that most people tend to market in tourism, the laundry list of things to see and do, those features are what gives the visitor and the residents permission to believe that the brand of their city is true, that what it is known for is valid, and what it is known for is quality. So ultimately, it can become a substitute, like I was saying about Paris. And you got to think about, and I should have changed Yugo because they haven't been around for a long time. But if you remember Yugos, they were pretty crummy cars, as opposed to Rolls Royce. And what do you want to be? You want to be a Rolls Royce, or do you want to be, a skateboard or something? And part of that is because place names imply stuff about people. So if someone tells you they went to the beach, you're going to get a huge, if you meet me and you know nothing about me and I'm tan and you say, gosh, you're tan, and I say, yeah, I just got back from the beach. Oh, where'd you go? I went to Saint-Tropez or I went to Myrtle Beach. You're going to get a completely different idea of who I am. You're going to jump to a whole bunch of different conclusions about probably my wealth, certainly whether I like golf or not. You're going to reach conclusions instantly, and that happens all the time. You know, here in Connecticut, if I tell you I live in Greenwich versus Bridgeport, you're going to lead to conclusions about me and so forth. So one of the things to ask yourselves and one of the things to work on is, you know, what is conveyed? What does Norwich imply about people, both the people who visit here and the people who live here? And is it fair? And how can we improve it to benefit everybody? The residents who are here and help engender pride in their city, because they should feel pride in their city, and the people who come. And I want to make clear that a brand identity, because it's complicated like that, it's not a slogan. And so that's where the Rose of New England fell short to me, is that it's very flowery, but it doesn't really say anything. And so I just want to put that forward as something to think about how to expand that. And if you think about what makes brands strong in products, it will also help you think about what makes brands strong regarding destinations and localities. So you get high customer involvement. People think that their identities ride on what kind of cars they drive, or you know, even computers, if you've got a big gaming unit or not. Whether things are known to have been quality products for a long time. But you know, high customer involvement, something like, you know, Antarctica or the Serengeti, where you know it becomes this huge aspect of your personality that you've been there, or something that has been known to be a good place to go for a long time, like Santa Fe, or something that's always been a destination, like Miami Beach, just in the same way that, you know, FedEx got there first, and Xerox got there first, and Amazon got there first. And all of that's about having a personality, like Harley Davidson and the way the sound is. Nantucket comes to mind there, where it's a specific thing. Whether it's coordinated such that everybody knows how they're doing it, in the way that, you know, Absolute had that long ongoing thing. It's been like 20 years that they're still showing art pictures of their bottles. And the I Heart New York campaign, where people are putting it all over their clothes. And whether it's understood instantly in the way of Napa Valley. So if you look at what your, I don't know if this is a light or not. Yeah, okay. So if you think about heritage investment relative to competition, you've got an experience that is on a range of costs, like low to high, right? And you've got an experience that is either very much like a lot of other places with little differentiation, or very specific and very different from other places. Maybe the only place in the world that you could do something. Like Churchill, Canada is the only place you can easily see polar bears safely. And so here's a couple places you don't want to be. You don't want to be a place that is like a lot of other places but costs a lot. You know, that's bad. No one's going to choose you over the identical places. You also don't want to be a place that is like a lot of other places but doesn't cost a lot, because now you're going to get everybody and their brother, and it's going to become annoying to the residents who live there. There's going to be capacity issues and so forth. You also don't want to be low cost but very high differentiation for the same reason. And this is the sweet spot where you could be, where you have a lot of differentiation, but you're getting a lot of value to the city. You're getting jobs, you're getting tax returns, and so on. So I encourage you to look at how to get to that corner. So at the end of it all, and this is the end of our brief segue into destination branding, you've got something that's true internally to the people who are local and the people who know their city better than anybody else. You've got something that seems true to the people from the outside who are contemplating it as a place to make an investment decision of time, of money, of vacation days, whatever. that leads into this. And as long as these things stay aligned, you'll be okay. There won't be cognitive dissonance among any group, either on the inside or the outside. So how do you do that? You have sort of the inside side here, local stakeholders where you're developing things to see and do and getting people to believe in it and improving them and measuring how you did and then running that cycle all over again so you're in continuous improvement. And the same on the promotion side, where it's like, how do we tell people all about it? How do we do that in a way that's simple and elegant and memorable? How do we communicate that information to people? How do we measure whether that works? And then doing it all over again. And these things are mutually enforcing. As you have more products, you got to change the promotion, but the brand identity can remain the same. So what does that mean for cities per se? It turns out that if you have a strong brand identity that encompasses community development and tourism development and economic development, it's a very useful lens for making planning decisions. Even things like having a graphic identity that reinforces it, having your wayfinding system and signage look good, having oh wow, it's later than I thought. Okay. Having ways for people to get information that work. So what that tells you is that tourism's a system. And all of it will ultimately reinforce each other in ways that are supportive to community and economic development. And that there's multiple iterations of that. It is a multiplier effect. It's not just the jobs at the sites that draw travelers. It's having more money in the economy in general and making the place more desirable to live and exposing it. And that's in part because that brand identity is an asset and is something that therefore has to be managed and reinforced. So I hope that it's clear that marketing doesn't just exist in a vacuum. You have to have things that back it up. And that can be new products, but it can also just be packaging them into experiences that people can do, including being around other people and people who live here and the fantasy of what life would be like here if you became a resident, if you were a newcomer. So in the end, the residents are as important as the visitor because you're cultivating community pride, you're getting people to participate, you're asking people to understand and to celebrate underlying shared characteristics, to support public programming, and to engage with the visitors themselves, which ultimately is going to be good for hospitality and good for business prospects. So what do you do? Well, if you're treating it as a system, and someone's got to be in charge to tend the system. Somebody's got to figure and I say somebody, but people, an organization, an entity that understand learn how to understand Norwich's identity and how to shape it, and aren't passive, that are aggressive but are respected by the community and that can explain to people why this is important, and can look at what you already have and how to link it together better, whether it's the existing historic sites or the waterfront or your transportation center or the places to eat, sleep, and shop. All of that stuff that is public sector driven, not-for-profit sector driven, and also private sector driven, because a good heritage visitor experience is going to encompass aspects of all three. So finally, I just really want to convey to you how much more you could have here, because if you dealt more directly and incorporated ways of supporting heritage development and heritage tourism into the way you thought about the decisions about how you want your city to evolve and where you want to invest and what you'd like to see happen over the next 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 years, there will be a cumulative impact that is going to be positive and is going to affect quality of life for everybody here. Because you'll become more memorable. You will have the economic activity that supports your cultural organizations You'll have people motivated to come, more people motivated to come here, and ultimately shared benefits around. If you look strategically at how to strengthen the things that put all that together. And they are not all large and formal. They can be very organic, and very small. It can be as simple as, small places for artists, because of the sense of discovery that is part of what is so appealing for visitors. So if you start thinking big, you will get big results, including and especially people improving the connotations they have around Norwich, because it's a place where historic, natural, cultural, and recreational resources are abundant, high quality, and thriving. So all that takes a strategy that entails coordinating program and looking at investments and thinking about marketing and all of that. Oh, wow, that is odd. There seems to be a font problem. Okay, so in short, what that means is, convening all the players from the public, private, and not-for-profit sectors, looking at all the resources, figuring out how everything interrelates in terms of your local economy, and planning for implementation success, identifying interpretive themes, marketing themes, brand identity, and so forth, putting together specific goals, consulting constantly with stakeholders so you have an iterative process that people can see their fingerprints on and buy into. And then after you've marshaled a lot of community support, finalizing and promoting it. So there's that font again. So how do you start? You start with who convenes, which doesn't have to be the same as who ultimately implements the plan and is the homeroom for all of this activity and tends the web of connections and tends the system. So what do other communities do? So there's basically 5 approaches. There are communities that take their sword and anoint an organization, and it might be an existing resource organization that has extra capacity. Somebody's running a historic site, or somebody who's running a particular program. It might be an existing support organization, like a group that exists to help many others, like a chamber or a tourism marketing agency or something like that, an economic development organization. It might be an entity assembled just for this purpose, either to manage a planning process or to run the whole show. A lot of times people put together boards and there's a seat for every big organization in the town, plus a couple seats for restaurants and hotels and, in your case, casinos, things like that. It might be an entity that is an interim entity that gains trust and neutrality because it doesn't have a long-term stake. And a lot of times what happens with both the assembled entities and the interim entities is that somebody gets asked and they say, well, I'm going to need some help. Or I don't want to do this for my whole life. I'll help now, but I don't want to do this for my whole life. And that's how that comes to be. And then the last option is the hybrid option, where there's an organization that is running attractions that are pertinent, has extra capacity, but is also established as an entity that is helping multiple other allied organizations with parallel missions. So at the end of it all, you're trying to build appreciative audiences, your residents and visitors of equal importance. You're trying to strengthen the organizations that you have so that plans and projects go forward smoothly. And you're trying to nurture the interrelationship between economic development, tourism development, and the heritage resources themselves, whether they're cultural or natural or historic, or just the whole ambiance that is your brand identity that explains why Norwich is special. So at the end of the day, good places to live are good places to visit, and good places to visit are good places to live. There are many people who never fix their house up until it's time to sell it. And there are many towns who use visitors as an excuse to do things that will actually benefit their residents. And there are many towns who focus on their residents and do things that will benefit visitors. But at the end of the day, the stronger you make Norwich for residents, the stronger you will make it for visitors, and vice versa. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Yes, Alderman Browning.
I'd like to ask you to send me a copy of your PowerPoint.
Oh, sure.
That would be good.
Actually, they already have it, so
Okay, they'll send me
can I call on you to do that? Okay, thank you, Regan.
The second question I have is, you mentioned the heritage travelers. Is there any information on how many of them there are, the demographics, anything that we could be referred to?
Yes, I can put that together and I'll send it to them to send to you.
Okay.
Yeah, periodically people survey travelers with different motivations about both their demographic characteristics, but also their spending patterns. So you can see, they spend X dollars a day more than, Joe Random Traveler. So I'll get that together as well. Okay. Oh, you were asking for the,
Yeah,
you were
but
asking for
I
the
also have
presentation
a
too.
question.
Okay.
I yield.
Please.
We good? Okay. Do you have any examples of best practices for cities and towns, the typical post-industrial, seeking to find an identity best practice? The things that have worked elsewhere? Different
Yeah.
types of development or?
Sure. One of the places that I'm going to bring up to you all is both different and the same, and that's Annapolis, Maryland. And I'm going to bring them up because they have a ton of historic fabric and a waterfront. Obviously, they also have the Capitol buildings for the state of Maryland, even though many of those offices are in fact in Baltimore, and they have the Naval Academy. So they're larger and they're bigger. But the reason I bring them up is because they came to the realization maybe 15, 20 years ago that their historic houses were duplicating story because they were all talking about how there were 4 signers of the Declaration of Independence from Annapolis. And, there was a fact set of like 10 facts that you were just bombarded with everywhere you went. And so it was boring because you went to 2 or 3 of them and you were like, I don't need to go to the rest of them. And they also and so what they did, and they also realized that all these little historic house museums were duplicating effort. Like they all had to have accountants and they all had to have boards, and there weren't enough people to go around to populate all of those things. So the first thing they did was, and it was painful, but they got all their house museums under one umbrella. And so then they had coordinated stories that were different, and they figured out an order, but they also made it possible for you to go in any order and be okay. And they managed to save a lot of money because they could get rid of all the duplication, and they kept their volunteer corps better because now they could move their volunteers to place so the volunteers didn't burn out, standing in the same room for, the next 20 years of their lives. So that was the first thing they did. And that took 10 years. And then the next thing they did was that they realized that they had that same problem writ large across their base of museums, their base of festivals. There wasn't even a common calendar. So every year somebody would forget and would schedule something big on a fall weekend where there was a home football game. And it happened every year. And every year people were like, why? And so they started coordinating that. And then once they did that, they were now in a position to market everything, again, in a coordinated way. And to, more importantly, to pay for data. Because none of these places could afford data on the visitors. Because getting data on visitors is expensive. And so now they were sharing manpower, volunteer resources, coordinating storyline and marketing, and the gathering of raw data. And all of that has really, and then the last thing they did was they figured out that they were successful, and unfortunately, they started getting backlash from the community. I mean, nice problem to have, right? That the community backlash on too many visitors. But so then the last thing that they did was figure out how to channel the visitors better so that they weren't impeding on the residents' quality of life. And that was probably also like a 5-year process because, you know, the visitors had gotten used to running amok, and everybody in DC, you know, your visitor came from out of town, what are we going to do with them? Well, one of the things we can do with them is take them to Annapolis or send them to Annapolis and show their favorite streets. So that is a story of an evolution of a city that has similar issues. I don't know if that helps. And then I guess I would say, I would also want to bring up cities that have done, and this is not Annapolis, but, okay, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. One of the things that Lancaster, Pennsylvania did, because that was like all Amish all the time, which you know, and the Amish were popular and everybody wants to come and gawk at the people and their buggies, but there was an awful lot more. And one of the things that Lancaster did was they came up with a whole slew of community-wide themes that resonated on the Amish story in ways that were pertinent to the rest of the city and to economic development. So it had to do with the value of hard work. It had to do with the value of honesty, you know, plain spokenness, and it had to do, and so that allowed them to do things like incorporate a quote museum into their show, because that is plain spun, hard work, you know, boom, boom, boom. And I'm simplifying it in part because I don't remember exactly the themes, but the point is that it resonated truthfully inside and out, and it tied together tourism development, community development, economic development. So there's more, but as a start. So anyway,
Thanks.
I can go on and on like this, and sometimes I do. I apologize. Yeah, or, well.
Go ahead, Tim.
What do you think of Burlington, Vermont? Does that kind of match up with Norwich in any way?
I don't know enough about Burlington, Vermont, but I am going there on Tuesday, so I'll even have an opinion by the end of the week.
Thank you.
Other members of council, questions? Please, Joanne.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just have a silly question. Are your shoes Clark's?
No, they're artisan.
I
and
love them.
Thanks. They come in like teal and red, and they're on Amazon. Artisan.
So it's a branding issue, so that's
Yes.
why it ties into the whole
Right.
thing.
Artisan. Yeah. Thank you. I call them my Pope shoes.
How do you get everyone to buy in and share in the effort of actually maybe relinquishing some of their own identity so that the community itself can flourish? Because I know sometimes, and I know in the past, a lot of our historic organizations got together and they held meetings at a library, and I see more collaboration today than I did then, but how do you really maintain that?
Yeah, momentum is really something to be managed. I'm going to answer that two different ways. First, from a process standpoint, it really is an art to have it neither be too long or too short. Because if it's too short, people will feel like they're being railroaded and they didn't have enough time to have stuff steep, as it were. If it's too long, you lose momentum and it grinds to a halt. So I think the first thing is so from a process perspective, the first thing is being very clear up front that, you know, we're going to have 8 meetings and here are the topics for all of them, and we're going to march down this road, boom, boom, boom. And if they collectively want to change that, they can, but then it's on them. From a implementation perspective down the road, I think that it's maybe I maybe I haven't done a good enough job of conveying this, but part of the art of heritage tourism planning is that you have to leave space for things that organically come up, whether they match or not. And you have to maintain space for people to just get excited about something that they want to do and not have it be something that threatens the alliance or threatens their involvement in the group, because you can't squelch, if like in your example when you said, somebody wants to do this event or that exhibit, and it doesn't directly align with, some of the broader interpretive themes. What it can do is align with other notions that are inclusive and positive, like we have a constantly changing menu of things to see and do. We execute these things to the highest level we can given the resources we've got. Stuff like that. We jointly promote each other's stuff, no matter what it is. So you can have values and principles that come out of the heritage planning effort that allow people, organizations, to do what fascinates them, or what they just got money for, or the dream they always wanted to do, in such a way where it may not be the most reinforcing thing of the heritage idea per se, but it's consistent in terms of how the community is trying to go forward and the quality of experience it's trying to offer. And that's particularly important because we've been kind of focused on historic stuff, but it's not just historic stuff. It's current day things to see and do, and it's the waterfront. And it is stuff that uses the physical plan for contemporary things and bridges those ideas and the past and the present and the differences between how things were done versus how things are done in the future.
Bill, you got any questions?
No, she did a wonderful job at the workshop.
Oh,
Appreciate
hi.
you being here today. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. I didn't see you back there.
I came in anyway in the room.
Yeah. No, I didn't see you back there. Thank you.
What's the next step?
You need to convene a group to plan the plan.
Okay.
That's what you need to do, and you need to have a homeroom for the entire effort, and begin.
How large a group? Should you start small and grow?
I think that it's usually what works. I don't know about numbers because I don't know enough about everything that's here. But usually what works is that you create a way for folks to participate at the level at which they are able. So it's like tiers of involvement. So a core group, and then maybe some study groups, and that people can participate in the parts of it they want to without having to sign on to the entire show. Because it's more important for people to be able to have a say in the things that are important to them and not be discouraged from that by the fact that they can't make a commitment to the entire thing. So I would, if I were you, set up a process where there's a few large gaps, and by few I mean like 3, of everybody in the world, and then much more smaller focused things. But there has to be a consistent actor coordinating all of those smaller activities. You might end up with one that was about interpretive themes. You might end up with one that was about capacity building for nonprofits. I don't know what they are, but subgroups so that people can dive in and out, but still have had a legit impact on both the process and the plan as product.
So while all this is, the investigation's ongoing, the city already has a number of pretty well-developed opportunities, like the October walking tours and
Yes, you do.
things of like that in nature. Is it important to grow around those, since they're already in operation and they're already, one, bringing people from outside the community in on a regular basis?
Yeah, you don't want to jettison anything.
Okay.
And the things that you already have, they're there for a reason. You know, they're there because they inspired folks to work on them, or because there was story material or physical material or something that is bolstering that. And so, yeah, every now and then you get a city that has some oddball thing just because somebody was interested in it. But those either grow or collapse into their own weight, and it's not, and that will just happen organically. So yeah, don't jettison things just because you don't immediately see the connection. The connection is there. It's like, well, I don't know. I discovered in my life that when I was bored with something, it was usually because I hadn't looked at it deep enough, you know? And usually on stuff like that, if you go deeper, and you keep going deeper, you'll find the thread that ties it to other things, and that will be a useful connection to understand.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
You use the term homeroom. Could you describe what that means and what the attributes of that would be?
Sure. What I meant was an organization that is the hub, the place where all the other organizations can go, the one that is keeping track of the one at my high school anyway. Every day you went to homeroom for 15 minutes and your attendance was taken and you got all the announcements from the principal's office and it was somebody was looking at you to make sure that you were there and that you didn't seem to be in trouble, you weren't sporting bruises that required an explanation or anything like that. And so that's why I picked the analogy, because the entity that kind of knows what all the moving parts are and how they connect, so that other people can just be focused on whatever part interests them and don't have to trouble themselves as much with how all of the gears are meshing together or not. Does that help?
Yeah. In your experience, has any of those homerooms been libraries, or are they all historical organizations?
No, libraries are actually coming because libraries are so interesting how they've come forward and are changing, and I'm like a huge fan of libraries. So yeah, actually, in Connecticut, there have been a couple of places where the libraries have been key players, and Willington comes to mind, and Waterford comes to mind, and there's one up in Hartford and East. It'll come to me. Sorry, I'm blanking. But libraries have played roles. Sometimes there's a community will want the homeroom to either be a not-for-profit actor, so that they're not subject to sunshine laws, because there is confidence keeping involved in this, and there is bargaining involved in this. It's something of the, I say to you, well, if I can get Stephanie to do this, will you do that? And that's the kind of conversation. And meanwhile, I say to Stephanie, Mr. Brownie says he's going to do this. Sam, I don't know if you're Sam or Samuel. He says he's going to do this if you do that. And that kind of behind the scenes brokerage. Sometimes, in some communities, that can happen in the public realm, okay, and in some communities, it's a reason to sort of have a separate entity do it. So I'll throw that out there. And then there's other places where it's a function of the city. There are other places where it's a function of some third entity, like Community Development Corporation or something like that. And then there are other cities, and this is probably the most common, where it's an existing amalgam. It's the Historical Society, or it's the Chamber, or some other group like that that already has an umbrella of pertinent actors in it and sites.
Everyone else? Thank you very, very much.
Sure. Bill has my contact information if any of you would like to get in touch. He can, my email address is Elaine, E-L-A-I-N-E, at econstew, like economic stewardship, my company, ECONSTEW.com. Feel free to get in touch anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this extended informational. It was the idea of Bill Nash, Elaine Timms, and Bonnie. As opposed to a half an hour, they thought that would be way too small. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Joseph. Yeah. Council, come back to order. Everyone, please rise. We'll be led by prayer by Alderwoman Stacey Gould.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Amen. Alderwoman Stephanie Burnham, please.
Pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the benefit of those assembled and anyone listening, Alderman Joe DeLucia will not be with us tonight due to family matters. Entertain a motion for the adoption of the minutes October 1st and 15th, please. Gould and Nash, is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, vote 6-0.
City Manager's report.
Thank you. This is the City Manager's report for November 5th, 2018. The Host Community Reception Center, the acronym is HCRC, rehearsal exercise was held on November 3rd at Norwich Technical High School. Along with the invited city staff, representatives from Norwich Public Utilities, Norwich Public Schools, Uncas Health, and local, state, and federal organizations participated in the event. The HCRC will then hold an evaluated exercise on November 17th at the same location. These events are required by the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, FEMA, and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, since Norwich is a host community in the event of a nuclear emergency. I attended the monthly COG and NCDC meetings. Staff and I met with the Golf Course Authority regarding budget items. I also held my monthly department head and fire chiefs meeting. Negotiations continue with the City Hall Union. The fire chief interviews have been scheduled for the end of November, and the fire truck bid was opened November 5th, that's today. 6 companies submitted bids. The bids will be posted on the city's website as soon as the review is complete. Norwich Recreation Department held their first annual Trunk or Treat event at Brown Park on Friday, October 26th, with approximately 800 people in attendance. Family and businesses, along with the Norwich Police and East Great Plain Fire Department, decorated their trucks or vehicles and gave out treats to over 500 children. A DJ provided entertainment, and prizes were given out for the best decorated trunks and best and most creative costumes. Thank you to the sponsors and to everyone that donated their time and provided treats and prizes. The Recreation Department was thrilled with the outcome. A safety training meeting was held on gas safety with representatives from Algonquin Gas Transmission. City staff included Chief Daly, Lieutenant Jacob Mankey, Director of Training and Safety. The CCM Annual Convention was held on October 30th and 31st. Staff and I attended several informative workshops, and I also attended the Board of Directors meeting and the gubernatorial debate, which was actually held that evening. I received notification from the U.S. Department of Justice that the Norwich Police Department assisted with the investigation of a former state judicial marshal who pleaded guilty to heroin distribution in the Norwich and New London area. Thank you for their assistance. School tours were given to 51 second graders from Uncas School and 32 kindergarten students from Mahan School. Thank you to City Clerk Betsy Barrett, my assistant Jackie Barbarossa, and the Mayor's Secretary Bonnie Kubrick for hosting the students and chaperones. And that completes my report for this evening.
Just for the record, Alderman Nash and I myself participated in the tours as much time as we were able to, and it was a lot of fun. Alderman Nash?
I just want to add on to that. Those kids were amazing, and their discipline, their behavior. I can't stress enough. They were so respectful and polite. Even the kindergartners were amazing. They were so attentive to their teachers and stuff. And I really hope that Abby, I'm glad she's here because I thought I saw you leave. I hope you'll encourage all the schools to please, especially on Tuesday, Wednesday, because I'm off. I'll help, Betsy, I'll help. They were great, and I think that they actually enjoyed every moment they were here, and they asked lots of great, intelligent, intuitive questioning. So please compliment your schools, the two that came, and those groups, and thank you. And Chief, they want the DARE program back, just so you know. So that was commented on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions for the city manager? Yes, Alderman Burnham?
Just to add on to that, I was at the trunk or treat, and it was a blast. It was so successful to be the first. Nobody was here that staffed. It was the first trunk or treat, and it was full. There were so many kids, parents, and people in costumes, and having so much fun. The DJ was amazing. It really was an event that Norwich should celebrate and be proud of. So, and the kids were awesome. So, just tagging on to that.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, Alderman Filbert?
I just wanted to make a comment on a personal note about in the city manager's report about the Department of Justice and the judicial marshal. If you all are not aware of it, addiction is a disease, and it touches everyone. I would venture that there isn't a person in this room who doesn't know someone or have a family member who has subjected. Oftentimes it starts with an injury, other times it starts with other reasons. But I know this family, and you couldn't ask for a better family. So it happens to everyone, everyone. So try not to judge. I know the officers have a job to do. I know this person broke the law, but it's sad. There's a movie out now that I want to see, but I'm afraid to see, and it's called The Beautiful Boy. And it's the story of a young man, I assume, who succumbs to addiction. So be supportive, be understanding, be strong, but listen to people, because it's an insidious disease, and it's rampant in this country. And I heard on the news last night that the FDA, in their infinite wisdom, has now approved a drug that contains 33% more fentanyl. What the hell are they thinking? It's big pharma, and it's an epidemic. So as I said, I just want to, we all sit and snicker about, oh, this one got arrested for that, or this one got arrested for that. But it's coming to a neighborhood near you. It is. So thank you.
Thank you. And if I could just alert everyone, Sunday is Veterans Day. The citywide Veterans Day service will begin at 1 o'clock on Chelsea Parade, weather permitting. Right now, it's forecast to be a nice sunny day, mid-40s. Should weather turn on us, we have secured the auditorium at the Kelly Junior High School, so we'll be able to accommodate anyone who wants to be there and be part of the program. This is something we've been working on for over half a year. We have 5 speakers, starting with the retired Vice Admiral Stotts from the Coast Guard Academy. And it's going to be a very nice program. Following that, at 3 o'clock, there's a second program, a reception at the Laurel Hill American Legion, Post 4, Robert O. Fletcher, Post 4. That was a gentleman who was killed in World War I. The post bears his name. That program begins at 3 o'clock. There's a concert put on for free by the Golden Nuggets, and they sing World War I songs. There's also, later in the evening, at Post 594, Post Horrigan, and the Industrial Park, the Veteran of the Year dinner. So there's a full day of veteran celebrations. If you can't make one, maybe you can make a second one, and so forth. But everyone is invited and encouraged to attend. Thank you.
Citizen comment on resolutions.
Excuse me.
Oops, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were done. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Well, as long as we're talking about community events, on Sunday at 11 o'clock at the Memorial Park in Taffville on the corner of South A and South B Street, South 2nd Avenue and South B, there will be a service to recognize veterans, and that'll start promptly at 11 o'clock on November 11th. In the event of inclement weather, it will be moved to the American Legion Post on Merchants Avenue in Taffville. So if the weather isn't nice, it will be out inside. If it's nice, it'll be outside. And I just wanted to say that I had the opportunity to participate in the host community rehearsal on Saturday, and the active drill will be on November 17th. Norwich is ready and prepared to handle, God help us all if there was a terrible accident at Millstone, but we are ready and prepared to handle such an emergency.
Thank you. Yes, Alderman Burnham.
Sorry, one more important community event. Tomorrow is Election Day. If you're not registered to vote, you can have same-day registration, and there's also curbside voting for people that can't get out of their cars. So that's a nice thing. So vote tomorrow.
Please.
We'd be remiss if we didn't say.
Thank you. Okay, please.
Sorry. Citizen comment on resolutions.
I declare citizen comment and resolutions open. We have one person who signed up, and I hope I'm reading their name properly. Eliza Larson. And I don't think she stayed. Okay. Anyone like to address the council on any of the agenda items, any of the resolutions? Please.
Marvin Ceruto, 100 Star Street, Norwich, Connecticut, United States of America. On Resolution 9, I would just hope that you'd elaborate a little bit on the van. I know it may sound a little bit silly. We were kind of joking around a little bit earlier. I didn't know if it was a passenger van or if it was a utility type van. Also, since you brought up nuclear preparedness, a lot of you know that I was very much involved in that with a nuclear power plant. and sometimes the vehicles are used for disaster preparedness. Just because it's a nuclear preparedness drill doesn't necessarily mean it has to be specific to that. It can mean weather disasters, which probably is the #1 thing that would hit us. So if you could elaborate on that a little bit. I know it may seem like a small item, but if we take care of our pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to join us under citizen comment? Anyone else under citizen comment? Third time. Anyone else under citizen comment? Seeing none. Thank you. I declare it closed.
Number 1, relative to an appointment of an alternate member to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Entertain a motion, please. Bring the resolution forward. Alderwoman Gould, Pro Tem Nash, is there discussion? Seeing none. For the benefit of the general public, Gregory Schlau is being appointed as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. All those in favor? Unanimous. Vote is 6-0.
Number
2, please.
Relative to an appointment to the Volunteer Firefighter Relief Fund Committee.
Motion, please. Nash, Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Yes, Alderwoman Gould.
I just wanted to say that I am absolutely thrilled that Dan Dennis agreed to come on to the Volunteer Firefighters Relief Fund. I think he's a wonderful addition with his background experience as the president of the Norwich Savings Society and then morphing into People's United Bank. Brings a lot of knowledge with him to that committee.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. The vote is 6-0. 3, please.
Relative to an appointment to the Board of Review Dangerous Buildings.
Motion, please. Bring this forward. Gould and Nash. Is there discussion? Yes, Alderwoman Gould.
I'd like to thank Darrell Wickham for stepping into some gigantic shoes to fill, following in the footsteps of our beloved Sophie Noblick. Darrell comes to all of our meetings, and he always has something thoughtful to add to them. He presently sits on a couple of our committees of sale, so putting him on to Dangerous Building Board of Review was sort of a no-brainer. But thank you, Darrell, for agreeing to come and be an official member.
Thank you. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. The vote is 6-0. 4, please.
Relative to an appointment to the 66th Street Committee of Sale and the 66th Street Committee of Sale. Sorry, Committee and then Committee of Sale.
Motion, please bring it forward. Alderman Burnham, second. Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion?
I'll say the same thing again. Thank you, Darrell. Big shoes to fill, but I know you can do the job.
Thank you. Is there further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. 6-0. 5, please.
Relative to an appointment to the 347 Central Avenue Committee of Sale.
Motion, please. Alderwoman Gould, second. Pro Tem Nash. Is there discussion?
I don't have to say it again.
The gentleperson being appointed to this is Darrell Wickham. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor? It's unanimous, 6-0. 6, please.
Relative to an appointment to the Rehabilitation Review Committee.
Motion to bring it forward, please. Alderman Pro Tem Nash, second. Alderman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? For the benefit of the public, Alderman Sam Browning is appointed. Motion is 6-0. 7, please.
Relative to authorizing the transfer of residual funds from the previous year for the Winterfest events to the Norwich Events Organization, Inc.
Motion, please, bring it forward. Alderman Burnham, second Alderman Gould. Is there discussion? Alderman Gould.
I just want to thank the Norwich Events Organization stepping up to the plate. You have some big shoes to fill. Under Tucker Braddock's leadership, Winterfest Parade is a tremendous success in the city of Norwich, and I know that you will take his baton and run with it very carefully.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous vote is 6-0. 8, please.
Relative to support the Norwich Winterfest Parade.
Motion, please. Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous vote is 6-0. Number 9, please.
Relative to repurpose funds for the 2018-2019 capital budget to purchase a van.
Motion to bring this forward, please. Pro Tem Nash, second Alderwoman Burnham. Is there discussion? Yes, Alderwoman Filbert.
Once again, I find myself in a position to ask. It is now November 3rd, November 5th. I don't understand why these things come up so quickly after the budget season. You either need a van or you don't need a van. And my question is multifaceted. What does the van do? What is the van used for?
Alderwoman Gould.
Do you want to ask the second question, and I'll answer them both at the same time? As the Chair of Public Works? Or you want me to
I need to know why they need a van, and then that will...
Well, they presently have a van.
Okay.
That it's a multiple passenger van that they use to transport many people to one site for, let's say, landscaping, lawn maintenance, or they're taking multiple people to a site because they have a small road collapse, to do a paving project, et cetera. And it's much more efficient to take all of these people in one van, drop them all off, and then the big truck comes, the lawn mowing equipment comes in another means, but they're all there, rather than having them multiple pickup trucks driving all these people to the same location. And the reason for it now, they had asked for a new pickup truck and realized that their need for the van is much more critical. The van is in poor condition, it's rusting out, and so the need for the van is much more critical, so they decided that they would take the $35,000 that had been allotted for the truck and take $30,000 of that money for the van, and $5,000 will stay in the capital budget to be repurposed at another time.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, but I will follow that up with a couple of statements. In the 14 years that I have lived on the Norwich Town Green, I have watched the Public Works Department come to mow the lawn. There is never less than 3 trucks. 2 come in this one, 2 come in this one, 2 come in this one. So why now, all of a sudden, do we need... I'm at a loss for words. It's tax and spend, spend and tax, tax and spend. What happened between, they should have known in July, or when they submitted their capital budget, that the van was on its last leg, but that's neither here nor there. So all I'm going to say is that I certainly hope that in the upcoming budget, I will not see a request for a pickup truck in the Public Works Department budget.
I can't guarantee that.
Because you can't have everything. And the sooner that we realize that you can't have everything, the better off we'll be.
Thank you. Alderman Browning.
I just have two things. Councilor Philbrook, would it help you if this was tabled for 2 weeks and Public Works could come in, the head of Public Works could come in and discuss your issues with this proposal?
No, I think both you and Stacy are on the Public Works Committee, aren't you?
And the mayor, I'm just simply,
Okay.
asking from if that would help you at all.
No, I have,
So you could ask these questions to him.
I have faith in the decision. I just, once again, I am confused and conflicted about the process. It seems that every time we have a meeting, something else needs to be transferred. I don't know why we do a budget.
Okay?
Please.
The second question is, one of the things which we did look into was whether we could share a van with another department, and we did talk to the police department. They say we can't share that one of their vans. I'm not talking about the surveillance van. I'm talking about the marked van. Okay. Can I ask? Okay, whatever. Can I ask you to just talk about why you couldn't share the marked van? I know we tend to be.
What does the unmarked van look like?
It's white.
Why so marked?
If an unmarked van shows up to your house, nothing good's going to happen. We do have two vehicles, and there's no secret about it. One is a unmarked van that we use to transport officers to narcotic raids. To be honest, we have to get people there. So we changed its appearance, and it's very old, and it's 112,000 miles on it. The other one is about a 18-year-old van, and that is used for transporting officers to Winterfest Parade, fireworks, any large events we have, and it's also our backup prisoner cell block. In case there's an evacuation due to fire or some type of incident at the police department, that van is then started and we shackle the prisoners inside the van. So we need access to that van 24/7 because that's our mobile cell block, instead of having to find, if we have a busy weekend, 8 cars to line up and put prisoners in. It's much easier for us to get one vehicle, put them in, the prisoners in there, and do it. So, or in case of a large-scale protest. Right now, in the last week, we had 2 protests in Norwich. They both went very well, but the possibility does exist for mass arrests, as much as we hate to have it, but it could happen. So I can't schedule those, so I kind of need access to the van all the time.
No, my issue is not with,
I'm just saying, we don't mind helping, and I think Alderman Browning was looking for an outside-the-box solution, and I just want to let you guys know that we did vet the solution. I ran it to ground, and I just don't think that's in the best interest of either department.
And that's the vehicle you use to transport prisoners. Is it like a Marshall truck with like?
It's a passenger van, because if we go to like rifle training, or if we go to events out of town, a funeral or something, we pile everybody in. So it's a passenger van. It's not a paddy wagon per se, because it can transport officers, citizens, civilians, and also if we have to put the prisoners in there.
Final question, and I'll stop beating this dead horse.
Yep.
If we go buy this for the Public Works Department, and then that van breaks down, would you then consider sharing their van, their new van?
Their van?
If we buy them a new van, the Public Works Department.
I'd keep to band-aiding ours as much as, we've asked for replacements for many years for our vans. So many times we just stopped asking. And so they're old, they're high hours. The miles on the marked van's not outrageous because we don't go long distances with it, but it has a lot of hours of sitting idling. And the other van, again, has 112,000 miles on it, and they're not the easiest miles.
Yeah, and my apologies, but since there's about $30,000 worth of money involved here, I thought I'd at least work through the process in public.
I have no problem with that at all, and glad to answer it. Any other questions on our vans?
may I have a follow-up question?
Certainly.
So when we purchase this new van for the Public Works Department, what will happen to the current van?
It'll have to go away.
Be junked.
It will go away.
It will go
Oh,
away.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that takes a little of the sting out of it.
Not in the business of
yes.
running spares. Thank you very much, Chief. Is there any further questions on Resolution 9? Do you have the sponsors on the second? Okay.
First and second.
Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, the vote is 6-0.
I hereby move pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-200, that the members of the Norwich City Council go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the performance and evaluation of City Manager John Salamone, who does not require that these discussions be held at an open meeting. City Manager John Salamone shall be asked to attend and participate during all or portions of this executive session at the request of the City Council.
Is there a second? Nash. All those in favor? Unanimous, the vote is 6-0. 319, please. Council, come back to order. Let the record show that no votes were taken.
Motion to adjourn?
You need a motion to come back.
Motion to come back. So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Nash. All those in favor?
Aye.